Hey there everybody, I am Bearded Bristol and I am just a guy who likes to talk and paint. Except I'm happy to say there's not going to be a whole lot of painting going on today because I have finished this here masterpiece, monstrosity, whatever you would like to term it. It's done. So if you haven't been following me much, this is a piece I have put together for an upcoming art show competition, and the deadline to turn it in is tomorrow, so I still have some work to do from the framing side of things, which I'm not going to bore you with because that's just mostly me cussing a lot. Anyway, we're going to do something a little different today. Still going to hopefully keep you entertained and thought-provoked, but I'm going to just kind of we're going to kind of zoom back on this and I'll show you the whole completed work and we'll talk about a couple of things and then just have a good old heart-to-heart chat. How about that? So anyway, let's get to it. Here is the piece. And hopefully as you look at this, some things jump out at you. Obviously, a lot of the videos I've done, I haven't gotten into great detail on a lot of the areas, in part because it's difficult for me to do some of that really focused detail work and keep my jaws flapping. But, you know, some really nice things came out of this piece. This area over here worked out really well. The way the colors kind of blended in. I did a final kind of blue wash over the whole thing to just help mute those yellows a little bit and give that illusion of shadow. Also throughout the creek here, what was interesting to me as I started to dive into the photo was the fact that there were several layers of the ice and the water, and hopefully the painting helps bring that out. There's only, you know, two areas here, right here and here, where the ice is actually melted and water is visible, whereas the rest of this is a very thin sheet of ice, some different layers of ice, and a covering of snow. And those things weren't immediately apparent in the photo that I shot, but I did work to kind of try to bring those out and give those a bit of life. You know, you also have some snow, we'll call them clods, that have formed on the river here throughout this area. Just, you know, clumps of snow that had frozen into place and some drifting that occurred around them. So it really, this photo really spoke to me because of the movement that's there, even though nothing was moving at the time that I shot the photo. You could see the action of the snow, the various stages of melting. The other area that really kind of insignificant but turned out very well is this bottom corner area here. Bringing the branches in at the very end provided some detail and some depth that wasn't there prior. But anyway, that's kind of the overview. You know, my last video we talked about this tree and how, you know, the sun is hitting it and it just kind of has a glow to it. I wanted that to be a focal point as well, but I didn't want it to dominate the piece, so I didn't make it bright white. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. I still have yet to title this. I have a couple of ideas, but maybe I'll post it in the description once I settle on one. Anyway, we're gonna get back to just a little bit of a chat here about some other things, but this is it, man. It's ready to move on for competition, and we will see what happens next. Thanks so much for joining me through all of this. It's been fun to explore my own thoughts and feelings as I paint, and hopefully you've gotten some enjoyment out of it as well. Okay, so there you have it. This is a painting. A completed painting, thank goodness. Still have to sign it though. This, however, hopefully you can see this okay. So that is the original photo. Obviously the clarity on that is not going to be super great, but this is a replication of reality based, you know, looking through a camera lens. Whereas this painting right here is a representation of that photograph done as realistically as I could possibly make it. This is not reality. That photo was an image of reality. And what am I getting at here? I have no earthly idea. Now, illusion versus reality. We are in a strange new world, kind of an adolescent age of social media and media in general. We've seen a great evolution over the last 30, 40 years in particular, but just recently as well, an evolution of the news that is more opinion than fact. And that's very troubling to me as a former journalist. I used to work for a newspaper, I was a photographer, and the one thing that is universal invariant when it comes to the media is sales drive stories. And it's troubling to hear that, but rarely anymore is the news about the news specific. There is almost always an underpinning of money built in there somewhere. And not to say you should not trust the news, but you should have a healthy skepticism when it comes to how you consume the news. And you don't want to be too susceptible to what is actually happening, and or what is told to you that is actually happening. And what does that mean? I've got a couple of examples that I'll just throw at you real quick from my newspaper days. Two of them stand out in particular, both very similar. One was a rally regarding illegal immigration. There were some opponents to a local ordinance that were holding a rally. And it was to be, they spent several weeks trying to generate interest in this rally. And it was a hot button issue in my community. So it generated some interest, mostly from people who were against said rally. And what does that mean? Well, on the event of the rally, I was sent out with my camera and my notepad to get pictures and images from this rally. And before I left, my editor told me, make sure to make the rally look big. Really. I was pretty new at the time, maybe within my first year with this newspaper, and that was the first time I had encountered an actual bias from my editor. But my editor also understood that sales of the newspaper drive revenue, pay our jobs, our salaries, all of that nonsense. So his goal, which then became my goal, was to try to make the rally look larger than it was so that people would buy more papers. More people would be interested in the story that way. And I arrived at the rally and there were 11 people. 11. And I got to laughing at those words that my boss had sent me out with, which were, make the rally look as big as possible. Let me tell you folks, it's awful tough to make a rally of 11 look like 111. It ain't going to happen. But I did what I was trained to do, which is focus in on tighter shots, try to get some depth of field so that a picture of 3 people gave the impression that there might be 30 more behind them. And so that's what I did, and did my best to make the rally of 11 look more like 111. I think probably we landed somewhere closer to 22. So I was not super successful on that one, but it would, there is a prime example, a real world example of my experience where I was actually helping to shape the news and make it into something that it was not. Similarly, there was a board meeting, board of directors, so to speak, for a local municipal issue. And again, it was a very seemingly hot button issue. Lots of people were talking about it. And once again, my boss said, make the room look as crowded as possible. Well, this particular room had probably close to 100 chairs set up, and there were roughly 25 people. The yelling that was talked about, all of the purported things that were going to be occurring at this here meeting, did not actually occur.
but my task was still to make it look as though it was contentious. And so you waited for somebody to make a face and quick snap a picture. You waited for somebody to ask a question that was maybe a little more heated, and then try to frame it such that there was a lot of contention at this meeting. And journalists, I like that word. Journalists are supposed to journal things, facts in particular, and rarely anymore are the facts relevant. And once again, it's because most of those things are driven by revenue. And so illusions creep in all over the place. And the media thrives on illusions, on fear, on crises. And that's how their bills are paid. You go where the money is. We are all somewhat conditioned for that. And there are very few altruistic journalists left out there that do actually report on the facts, for fact sake. They are still almost always leaning a specific direction, and the news we gravitate towards is the news that we like to hear. So when you find that network or that channel or that blog that you like, that like quickly turns into trust. And once you begin to trust that, it's very easy for those outlets to steer you in whatever direction they may choose. And again, what can you trust then? This. You have to start to trust in yourself. If it smells funny and looks funny, it's probably funny. You have to be able to trust in your own ability to sift through things and understand what's really going on. What is the actual motivation behind a news story or even an actual news event? Did this person actually say that? Well, yeah, that's a clip of them saying that. But is that the entire context of the comment? That was one of my favorite things you see with politicians, particularly in political commercials, but also on television, is we are going to isolate a specific clip to make someone sound like a liar or make them sound stupid. And in reality, it's only just a small portion of that entire clip. But it's done to elicit an emotional response from the viewer. And like I say, once you have come to trust that media outlet, whatever it is, it's very easy then to just go along and say, well, yeah, that guy really is a bumbling idiot. And it's ironic because President Trump was a big one about fake news. Anything that he didn't like was fake news. And he was right, but not in that sense. He was right in the sense that most news has an element of fakery to it. He didn't, fake news was anything that made him look bad. But in reality, fake news, it exists in all political arenas, in all environments, even on sports channels. Will skew things, will word things, phrase things, again, to elicit that emotional response. And those are dangerous things when we find ourselves caught in that. And I think, the pandemic was horrific in that sense because, if you recall, CNN had the ticker on the side of the upward death total. And not that all of those people did not die. Come to find out, many of those deaths were from other causes. But at the time, nobody had the ability or the wherewithal to sift through each individual case. So we're just going to have this ticker. And it was very morbid. Never seen anything like that and hope to never see it again. A real-time death ticker. But it was there to keep people engaged. To look at that number. Look how fast that number is going up. Look at how bad everything is. And yes, we were often locked in our homes, isolated from others. It was a very scary period. And I don't blame people for getting depressed or angry or any of those things, because the graphic images that we were being presented, made things look as though the world was indeed coming to an end. And in reality, when you walked out of your door, when you went to your job, if you could, things were still pretty normal. And I'm in a healthcare environment. I had to do the face shields. I had to do the face mask, full PPE at times, which is just the worst thing ever. But nevertheless, the people I was around weren't particularly scared, weren't particularly upset or frightened. It was very much a normal day with the exception of the costumes we were wearing. And yes, costume is metaphoric, it was for our protection. But nevertheless, the world kind of went on. But you went home and watched the news, and it was people losing their jobs, people losing their lives, hospital staffs being overwhelmed, on and on and on ad nauseum. But then you'd go outside and things were still kind of normal. So I think, that is maybe the most offensive case I can think of where the media, call it media malpractice, if you will, not presenting the world as it really was. Taking small microcosms and extrapolating that into a much larger picture to instill fear to keep you watching and keep you coming back to the news. You could probably say similar about just about any issue in recent memory, and it's unfortunate that the media does not deal exclusively in facts. And let's be real, it never really did. I think we're becoming more savvy as a people, but that still does not keep us from nibbling on the hook every now and then. But all of this to say, oftentimes what you see, particularly through a lens, particularly through a television or a computer, it's an illusion. It's what this is. It is not a reflection of, it may be a reflection of reality, but it is not reality itself. And just bear that in mind as you consume things around you, that it may be real. Parts of it may be 100% real, but the chances of the things that you're seeing, hearing, watching being 100% real is almost 0% fact. It's just rarely ever that simple. And I think if your eyes are open to some of the tricks, look for keywords, emotional words. There's factual words, and then there's emotion words, and emotion words are not fact. Because someone feels something, because someone believes something, does not then make it a fact. And, those words get slipped in. And watch TV commercials. TV commercials elicit emotional responses, or at least they intend to if they're good at their jobs. And they use those emotion words. And when you hear those same emotion words creeping into news stories, whoa, alert, alert, somebody is trying to bend an opinion. A panel of 5 experts does not mean it is factual information that they are speaking of. Again, there may be facts mixed within that, and most definitely there are. But chances are they are trying to skew your opinion. They are not journalists in the sense that they are writing a story and fact-checking themselves. They're having conversations, and conversations oftentimes take emotional turns, even if you aren't noticing it. So anyway, that's about all I got. Keep your eyes on the prize, man. And the prize being a sane existence. That is the prize, and harder and harder to attain it feels sometimes. Anyway, I'm going to do much like I normally do, except without the paints. I'm actually going to do some cleaning up around here, but I do, thank goodness, have a little bit of scotch here to keep me company. And of course a trusty pipe. But just to kind of wrap things up, this piece is done. I'm going to take on some things that are less labor intensive, so the videos should be a little more interesting to watch. Hopefully you still listen, or pretend to listen. Throw me a bone here. Anyway, I'm going to be doing some smaller pieces forthcoming. But, illusion versus reality. We are shown illusions all the time, and they are tried to be spun to us as real, and they are not, or at least not entirely. So keep your antenna up, keep your radar going, and explore the news. Do not simply consume it. And we have very limited times in our day with which to engage in the news, and right now there is an abundance of it. We are thrown a great many stories on a daily basis, and it's near impossible to keep up with fact versus fiction. But if there's something that you are particularly intrigued by, investigate it a little bit. Explore some media that you don't trust, or some media that you are not constantly consuming, to see if you're getting the same story across the board, or if there are different facts presented in each that tell a more comprehensive picture. The news is out there to scare you so that you continue to consume it. Don't let the news scare you. Rarely is it as bad out there as it seems. So that's my little words for wisdom, of wisdom, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, nice chatting with you. Go out there and create something, and we will talk to you again soon.